Welcome into Boxing Scene Today, not at the Pro Box TV studios, but my brothers in broadcasting are on the road, so I'm coming at you from my home studio. But boxing news rolls on the rest of the year, filling out and looking very, very good. Matchroom trying to put together Callum Smith versus David Morrell. Also, Subriel Matias, the former boogeyman of boxing, against Dalton Smith. It looks like it will be Turkey al-Sheikh PBC coming together for both of those fights. Help me break it down. The champs, Chris Algieri, Paulie Malignaggi. Chris, these two fights can't miss in terms of action and what it would deliver to the fans. Do you think they're coming at the right time? Or do you think they get made?
I really like the Callum Smith David Morrell fight. It speaks to Morrell, man. He's consistently fighting killers and really tough guys. You know, that last fight that he had was a really tough fight. You know, it was a pretty close fight too. Paul, you were actually telling me, you're like, this guy's really good. This is a tough fight for Morrell. Morrell dogged it out that fight and was able to get the victory and going right into a fight with Callum Smith. I was really looking forward for Callum Smith and possibly David Benavidez, but both guys are going different directions. Benavidez is gonna tangle with Anthony Yard, who is another guy that I really like, and I put on exciting fights. But Callum Smith, man, he's had a nice resurgence here at 175. It's a good fight. Smith can really punch. He's long. He's tall. He's got the experience. David Morrell, we know how talented he is. Another tough out. It's a pretty even fight in my eyes with the way that Callum Smith has been looking lately. And in terms of the Matias fight and Dalton Smith, I don't love it because I think the Matias fight with Puello was so close, razor thin, that fight shouldn't be, that rematch shouldn't be overlooked. It's unfortunate for a guy like Alberto Puello, who even for years I think has kind of been the upset guy. He's not supposed to be the guy, but he keeps winning. And now that he caught a loss and gave up that title to a bigger profile fighter in Matias. They're injecting Dalton Smith right in there. Not that Dalton Smith's not good, but I don't like the fact that Puello has been sidetracked because he's probably not going to get a rematch anytime soon, regardless of what happens in Matias and Dalton Smith.
Well, what I'm curious about, Paulie, is Subriel Matias, as we said earlier on, was the boogeyman of boxing before the Liam Paro upset. He's one of those guys that he was fighting in Puerto Rico. It was kind of his coronation. Goes out there and fights a flat fight. Paulie, can he bounce back from kind of losing that mantle of fear that he had not that long ago?
I think he's trying to. I think by winning a championship, I think he's set himself on the way. I don't know if you ever get that aura of invincibility back because at that time, when you're undefeated and you're running through guys and mowing guys down, you create sort of this image and this branding in people's eyes where you're like, wow, this is, like you said, the boogeyman of boxing. A guy who's kind of scary, and not just the way that he wins, but also the way that he wins. For me, I like the point the champ brought up about Puello maybe not getting a rematch and maybe deserving it, but I'll counter that too. Puello wasn't exactly talking about giving Sandor Martin a rematch either. That was a neck and neck fight. Sandor has had a few of these fights in boxing where he's kind of come up on the short end of the stick of a fight where he could have won, probably deserved the rematch, and just got sent on his way packing instead. So, now that the shoe's on the other foot, Puello can see how it feels. Having said that, yeah, with Dalton Smith, I think it was in the ring where Turkey al-Sheikh kind of was already letting Subriel Matias know after the Puello fight. If I'm remembering correctly, he was saying like, your next fight is going to be, later in the year against this matchroom fighter or whatever. I think that was a top topic of debate where the fight wasn't even finished up yet and had just finished up yet and already Eddie had already had one of his guys positioned there. Dalton Smith is a guy who's sort of been getting readied for the big time by Matchroom. They've kind of been pushing him and they've been sort of grooming him for an eventual shot at the big time. And I guess this is going to be the shot. The irony is that Subriel was with Matchroom, was he not? And then he got knocked off, right? And then he wound up over at PBC. Am I
I
remembering
believe
that
so, yeah.
correctly? The Paro fight was, was a big upset, and I think the Matchroom had signed Subriel, to kind of do big things around him. As a matter of fact, that Paro fight was in Puerto Rico, and then he came up short randomly, so he wound up at PBC, and now randomly he's fighting a Matchroom fighter. So this is the power of Turkey al-Sheikh and his money and his the potential that he brings to the table. But I'm not exactly complaining that Puello's not getting a rematch, just strictly on the fact that, I've seen Sandor now not get rematches a few times, and Puello was one of them. And nobody seems to worry and cry about what happened to Sandor.
Paulie, two wrongs don't make a right, buddy. Come on, man.
Nah, I know, I
Both
know, I
those
know.
guys are very
But
avoided,
maybe
tricky
next time,
guys.
maybe Puyo next time he gets a close one, he'll think about the guy that he's not giving a rematch to now. Because now he's the one not getting it.
Maybe he's learned a valuable lesson, right? But Chris, what's so interesting, you talk about, David Morrell and the murderer's row he's willing to take on. He wants all the smoke. Young in his career, right? 13, 12 pro fights. I mean, this isn't a guy who has a lot of guys are fighting nobodies at this point in their career. He wants all the smoke pretty early. There were times in the Benavidez fight. Remember, he started out strong in that fight with maybe a little seasoning. He could have won that fight or won those crucial rounds. Didn't quite have the experience to overcome, the trickery of Benavidez. But the idea that he wants so many tough fights early in his career. What do you think of that, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, it goes to the strength of their confidence, the team, behind Morrell. He's got a big amateur background. We're seeing more and more of these guys that don't go the traditional route of getting the 20 knockaround fights and then they get for a fight for a title. You're seeing these guys who are like a Morrell, who are fighting top flight guys in the first 5-6 fights, and they're getting world titles before they've got even 10, before they're in the double digits. And so for Morrell and their team, and I know his team, I know how they operate. They want the biggest, baddest guys around. There's no ducking, there's no half stepping with them. He wants all the smoke. He wants to be a world champion. They believe in their skills, and I bet you Morrell even today thinks that he'll beat Benavidez in a rematch. That's just the way that these guys are operating right now. But I tip my hat to them. It's a new age that we're seeing a lot of these young guys who are putting their undefeated records on the line. And I think the having to have an O thing is going away. Morrell has a loss. He lost to Benavidez, but listen, he's still a top flight light heavyweight. It's a very deep division, and I think we're going to see him in a lot of big fights coming up because he's literally going after the big dogs.
Yeah, when you look at it, though, the idea, Paulie, and I love the way you put it. David Morrell has great David Morrell has great A to B speed. Benavidez had kind of slicker combinations, but man, the hand speed on display in the Benavidez fight. Paulie, I remember it really impressed you, what you called his A to B speed. Can Callum Smith overcome that?
Callum has various levels of experience. So, you're looking at a guy that, probably can figure out certain ways to deal with it. I'm not sure Callum beats Morrell. I think Callum has a lot of experience, and he's an ex-middleweight champion, and he looked good in the upset of Watsy. But I think Morrell still is, sort of the fresher of the two. And I'm not saying, fresher because he's got less pro fight. See, I mean, that obviously helps, but I also am one of those guys that thinks, these guys with these monster amateur careers, they have the experience. They're not super, super fresh. Because if you've been at a world-class level in the amateurs, here's what you do realize. Every single time you're fighting tough opposition. Because now you're not entering the run-of-the-mill tournaments anymore because you're on the select team, you're on the national team. So all you're doing is fighting internationally consistently or at the high national level consistently. So there are no really easy fights. So if you're one of these guys with hundreds of amateur fights, likely the second half of those hundreds was all against tough guys, every single one of those fights. So, or other select guys. So the fact that Morrell is of this amateur pedigree, that's why he's able to compete at this level, and that's why some of these Russians are able to compete at this level so fast. They're the only thing you're missing is the amount of rounds, but the amount of insane skill set and ability to adjust and ability to think on the fly and at such a high level, at chess at high speed. They have all that, and they basically mastered it at this point. So that's why Morrell can move at a faster rate. I think Morrell may have a little bit left, actually, because he's probably still hungry. He hasn't accomplished what Callum Smith has accomplished. Callum Smith has been a world champion. Morrell has not been a real bona fide world champion. Granted, part of that is because Canelo does the ducking thing and never fought Benavidez and Morrell at 168. But Morrell still is looking for a major world championship, regardless of the politics of the sport. So I think that hunger and determination stays there. He had to get up off the canvas against Katiev in his last fight. Not an easy fight. Showed some grit there. Showed grit in the Benavidez fight. Obviously, these things do put wear and tear on your body, but Callum Smith also has some wear and tear on him. He's got a big win, and this is the time to make the fight. Listen, Morrell just won a good fight. Smith won an upset. It's a solid fight to make it this weight.
What about the other Smith, Chris? Dalton Smith against Matias, as you said, coming off a very, very close fight. Not just the cloak of kind of fear that he had before, but the overall skill set. Do you think he has the long-term career that we thought he had a little while ago? What do you think the upset possibilities are here?
For Dalton Smith, I actually think I like Dalton Smith. I like the way that he fights. I think he's put up some solid performances lately, but he hasn't been at the world class level yet. This is going to be his opportunity to showcase those skills, to see if he can do it with this kind of guy. But when you got a guy like Matias, he's not that hard to figure out. He's coming in the front door. He throws a ton of punches. He's a brutal puncher. He's really damaging the way that he throws his shots to the head and to the body. Really underrated body time, actually. Body puncher, actually. But Dalton Smith, though, he's got some nice skills. He punches well from the outside. He's got a good pop in that left hand. He stopped Chon Zepeda, who is long in the tooth, but he was a world-class guy at one point. Stopped him with a brilliant body shot. So the fight, the way it match up, I think it's going to be a good fight. But we're really going to see if Dalton Smith is the goods, because a guy like Matias is going to test you win, lose, or draw.
Two questions. Is a winner, presumably if it's Matias, he is the bigger name. Does he get the big money fight with the win? And could we see maybe a victorious Morrell circle back to Benavidez at some point? What's your thought on both of those questions, Paulie?
I think with Matias, he's searching for the big fight. He actually approached Teofimo Lopez at one of the live events recently. It went a little bit viral on the internet, where he kind of got in Teofimo's face and tried to say, "What are you going to say about Puerto Ricans now? What do you know? Why don't you talk? Why don't you talk now in person or whatnot?" So he was trying to, sort of stir the pot a little bit and try to get himself a big fight. So I think that's the goal. But again, I also think Matchroom is setting Dalton Smith to, they're pointing at Dalton Smith to maybe be one of their guys for the future. So, that's an interesting fight. We'll see how Matias will deal with Smith. We do know one thing: Matchroom has already gotten Matias beat once. I mean, I think inadvertently. I think this time they would like to beat him with Dalton, who is a guy that they're pointing at for one of their future stars. As far as Morrell and Benavidez, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if that rematch happens right away. Maybe down the line, if there's championships on the line at that point, But I think both guys are probably searching for the big fight at light heavyweight, the title fight at light heavyweight, the title fight that evaded them, both at super middleweight. I think they're both searching for that at light heavyweight right now.
Yeah, what do you think of the idea? Is there room, Chris, to kind of elevate both Benavidez and Morrell in the light heavyweight division? Are there enough big fights out there before they have to circle back, to Paulie's point?
I think so. I think it's a pretty deep division. Both these guys are in tough fights. You got Callum Smith, you got Anthony Yard, you've got obviously Benavidez, you've got Dimitri Bivol. There's a lot of top guys out there, and we just saw Katiev and Morrell. I mean, that last fight, Katiev is going to he's an issue. I mean, he's another one of these guys. Only has 10 fights, or now is 10-1, has 11 fights, but he's world class. So there's a lot of fights out there that can happen at 175 before we have to see Morrell and Benavidez fight again. But I like that fight too. I still like that fight. I think Morrell with a little more high level experience, the way he's been getting lately, becomes a really live underdog in that fight. But David Benavidez, he's got a big fights around as well. There's always Dimitri Bivol. Better Biev, I don't know how much we're really going to see of him. I feel like the only fight that he's really looking for is going to be the Bivol rubber match. But other than that, light heavyweight's one of the deeper divisions.
Yeah, it is outstanding. We have some outstanding fights heading toward the end of the year as they get a little closer, as they get made, and as they happen, and as they make boxing news. You'll find out about them right here on Boxing Scene Today. Join us. Find out why millions are watching.